often. What business do you do? Maybe there's more to what I've introduced.
Yeah, we are into events planning. But we are mainly a decoration company. I am a planner, I'm a florist, and a space manager, and also events planning.
How has the business been for you in these few months?
There's no business. No business where the worst hits. In this pandemic, where the most hits. Because we gather people. We deal with celebration, conferences, parties, birthdays, weddings, and those things are no longer feasible in the nearest future. We don't know when it's going to happen, but you see, we are there. I'm just like out of business. But you see, but we are hoping and trusting that it will be over soon, and we're really making adjustments and preparation towards post-COVID.
Taking into consideration what you have been through, I mean the event business, have been through in this period, do you think there is a future for event business in the FCT?
Yes, there is. We are optimistic. We are quite optimistic that there's going to be hope. Sincerely, we are preparing for post-COVID. We're tidying up because we know that very soon businesses are opening up. And I know that the government will be fair enough to us because we are major employers of labor. We have like up to 20 permanent staff and we have casual staff. Most of them are around to the village to farm, and they've established, maybe some of them have some buildings here and everything, it's not funny. So we are hopeful that it will come back. Businesses are opening up and we know it will come back.
But as the government has allowed for the gathering of like 20,
yes,
what are the safety protocols or measures you put in place for your clients?
Yes, we are taking a lot of measures. Face masks. The first one is of social distancing. In table setting, maybe in a table of 10, we'll make it a table of 4 or 5. There's going to be proper sitting arrangements. And also, before coming into the hall, you must sanitize your hand. Temperatures must be checked. You must wear face masks. And afterwards, before packing, our staff, we make sure that they are careful because we don't want anybody to get infected, so they have to wear their face masks and gloves during packing, or tearing down. We usually call them tearing down, technically. Then we do sanitize. I could remember the last time our last outing, that was last weekend. I personally came out with my sanitizer, a strong alcohol. Because we use napkins, we use charger plates, we use glass cups. So we have to disinfect them. I tell them to keep them and we soak them in bleach immediately. And for the fabrics, we have to make sure that everything is disinfected. And for the hall, what we do with the client is just that people are complaining about the pandemic and the cash trap, What we encourage clients, when you charge them, we encourage you fumigate. Okay, you disinfect the ambience before setup so that we don't pick those viruses. Wow. And also after setup, we disinfect again before we move in and finish it. We have to be careful because we have to be alive to serve you better during post-COVID. So yes.
I love your setup. I love the way you look. I think it has something to do with, the work you do. And I'm coming for a lecture. Thank you so much.
Thank you so
and the next thing we have for you is the Vox Pop. Pat Eyaba went to the street and she found out how the people in Abuja are coping in this pandemic.
I'm here with my face mask, which is now the new normal. No thanks to COVID-19. But I'm not here to talk about that for today. I'm here on the street of Abuja to talk about how the last 6 months of the year has been for them. So, come with me.
January and now, it has been 6 months already, and I would say it's a mixed kind of feelings because it's been good and bad at the same time. It started on a very good note, but somewhere along the line, due to the outbreak of the coronavirus, a lot of things has changed, but we are still very hopeful that as we continue to the rest part of the year, every other thing will fall in line.
It has been okay. We thank God, but the kind of the economic and the challenges we are facing, more especially we that we are in the FCT, is not, we can't find it very easy for us. So that is how things have been. So more especially with this COVID-19, things has not been so easy for us. The finance and even the transportation, you can see now I've been trekking right from central area there because I could not afford to. All the along vehicle are not listening, so that is why things have not been easy for us.
I'm a businessman. I normally sell snacks and soft drinks in Abuja. So for now, we have passed half of the year, but the COVID-19 have been a challenge to me because my patronizers have reduced. Why? Because of the lockdown. So there are some organizations like hotels, they are yet to reopen because of the COVID-19. But actually, I'm really believing God that things is going to work out. But the rumor that is flying out that we are going to have another COVID-19, I don't think that is going to be comfortable for me.
Last 6 months, it has just been God, nothing else. You know, since the coronavirus stuff, it was not really easy. For some of us, it was not really easy for some of us. Like some of us that is not working in the ministry, you know, like government job. So it has not been easy because there is no contract job, or there is no, like me now, I run business. Nobody want to do cake any longer. Nobody want to do no event and all that. So it has not been easy. And then we were expecting the government to assist by making use of our BVN, but it was not like that. Rather, even worsening they said maintain physical distances, but rather using palliative to cause more crowd together. It was not encouraging.
Yes, the year has been challenging, considering the fact that most economic activities have been on hold or on pause, in which even the ones that are probably essential services could not get all the necessary inputs that they need to have their services provided efficiently, are also being affected to the extent that there's no facet or there's no aspect of the economy that is virtually not affected.
In Abuja city, it's very unfortunate that the last 6 months, citizens of Abuja have been finding it so difficult to move about their normal activities due to the COVID-19 or coronaviruses that has been occurring from time to time. The restriction of movement and the curfew place has bring a lot of setback in the economic advancement of our society. And we are calling on the federal government to soften the curfew so that we can go back on normal activities.
Well, diverse opinions right there from the residents of FCT. Like the saying goes, hope is the last thing you lose. So let's keep hope alive for a better 6 months ahead. My name is Pat Eyaba. Over now to Rahab.
As you can see, schools have been closed for months now as one of the directives from the federal government to curtail the pandemic. I am in a school to see what they are doing as the government has allowed for certain classes to reopen, like the primary 6, JSS 3 and necessary because of their exams. And I can see one of the safety measures here, entering the school, that is water, rushing water, clean water to wash hands. And I am with the proprietress of Melfi Montessori School, Mrs. Ajuma Veronica Okolo. What classes are opening now?
The federal government directed that all the higher classes should be opened. That is SS3, GSS3, and grade 6. So that is why I came to see how the compound is, and then they put some things in place. And we were lucky when the school closed down around 30th of March precisely, as about 3 months ago, that all schools should be closed down. We were lucky that we resumed a week earlier than other schools. So we're able to finish our examinations and then put our reports together. So, and I was able to send the reports to the parents online. During the lockdown, I was able to get in touch with the parents to see if they'll be able to cope with the online studies. But they accepted, and they have been cooperating so far. At least the response has been like 90%. We send them homework, and they do it, they submit it, we mark it, and then send it back to the parents, especially those in grade 6 who don't have access to their own personal phone. But those for JSS 1 to 3, they were able to do everything themselves. They copied the note right into their books, do the assignments, and submit it to the teacher. The parents have appreciated. Some of them will even call to ask how they can assist, since they were not paying school fees. But I thank God for the good parents that I have, and they have been cooperating all along.
The guidelines by the government, recently, that some classes should resume because of their exams. What safety measures have you put in place to ensure the safety of the students?
We have already putting things in place, because though they have not actually told us whether we are going to resume on Monday, but we suspect we should be back to school by Monday. So I came around now to get the compound ready, the buses ready, and then the COVID-19 compliance, which I'm going to demonstrate right away. You get the soap, and then you rub it, and then press the button down. Then when you finish, you pick the serviette and clean your hand, and then enter before you can be allowed to enter the class. And also, I'm going to send messages to the parents so that all the children can come with their mask fully on, and then make sure that everything is set in place for their safety. It's even better now because it's not the whole classes that will be open. So we can have like 3 students to a class for COVID-19 compliance. In addition to the measure, we have also decided to disinfect the compound and the whole classes so that we can have a good sanitary environment for the children that will be resuming soon.
COVID-19 is everywhere. It's a worldwide pandemic, and it's really affecting us. Let us protect ourselves from this deadly disease.
As the sensitization campaign intensifies at the grassroots in the FCT, the SA media to the FCT minister, Sani Abubakar, explains that FCT chose to take the campaign on COVID-19 to the grassroots as they live with little information at the rural communities.
The message has sunk in that there's a virus out there, and they all know the effects. But the bottom line is that they are just reluctant to comply with these basic guidelines.
What we're experiencing now is community transmission of the disease. And so it is very, very important for people at the grassroots level to be able to understand the potency of this disease.
All over America, don't come. All over Nigeria, if you do the right thing, Corona will catch you. Use your face mask.
Indeed, behind every entertainment, there is a serious message, which experts say is as old as man and was used during the medieval period to convey messages to people. Artistic director of the National Troupe of Nigeria, Tauko, says the troupe will use the entertainment medium to attract and drive home its messages on the preventive measures against the spread of coronavirus.
Instead of just going on television, on radio, interpersonal communication is very important in media, so that they know that it is real and is being canvassed by human beings like them.
The way we are doing, using folk music, using various channels to reach the people, that we would be able to bring the reality of the danger of the coronavirus to them.
The audience agreed that through this medium, more people will be aware and take responsibility.
Corona, wear your face mask, my brother. Show me your face mask. Help us, help us. Rasta, help us. And I don't understand again. You don't be correct, sir. Huh? We want you to stay alive, man. I man, stay alive. Corona, Korobaku. Do the right thing. You go keep Koro. Koro keresiwa. Koro keresiwa. Koro keresiwa. Koro keresiwa. Koro keresiwa. Koro keresiwa. If you do the right thing, you go kill Koro. If you do the right thing, you go kill Koro. If you do the right thing, now you go kill Koro. Koro Koro. Japan, Korobaku, Abuja, Korobaku, for Lagos, Korobaku.
As human beings, we are survivors. We know how to adapt even to the most difficult situation. And this you have seen in the lives of the different people that we've featured on this episode. Thank you so much for being a part of this episode. Till I come your way next. My name is Rahab Okbe, and it is bye for now.
If it be like say you know well, like it's something they do you. And you feel say, you believe say, you get to see they do you. And your body no researchy, like it's something they do you. No let panic finish you, you go win all. Self-isolate for the sake of all
the... She cried. She cried in anguish and in pain. She bears the scourge of her grief. She toils in vain for justice and succumbs to silence. He gloats over his malady. Like a beast, he pounces with no remorse. Her cry meant nothing. Her pain feeds her shame. Like an orphan, she is left to grieve in solitude. But no more will she cry in vain. Her adversaries will henceforth bear the brunt of their bestiality. Rape is evil. Rape is a plague, a pandemic of monumental consequences. We must unite and kick it out of our society.
Connect with NTA and stand against rape and rapists. This message is brought to you by the Nigerian Television Authority, NTA.
Free from COVID-19. Let's endure. So social distance, oh my brother. Wear your face mask, oh my sister. Wash your hand well, my brother. We want to be free. 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 Loved ones and you want to go to work, but we have to stay at home and stop this infection. We will overcome these times and get rid of this disease. We will overcome these times and live in unity. We want to be free. We want to be free. We want to be free.
You can follow us on all our social media platforms: Facebook at NTA Network News, Instagram at NTA Network, Twitter at NTA News Now, YouTube at NTA News Online. Or visit www.nta.ng. For live streaming, visit www.nta.ng/live. Now, you can stay updated on the go, be it on your TV, iPhone, laptop or iPad, or download the NTA mobile application from your Play Store or App Store. NTA, you can beat the rich.
Nigeria, a nation of great people. Different tribes and languages, yet we are united in our diversity. All over the world, Nigerians are known to be very hardworking and resilient people. In our history as a nation, there have been many storms, but just like the eagle, we always soar very high above the storm.
Confirmed coronavirus cases in Nigeria, now over 36,600.
As Minister of Foreign Affairs, Geoffrey Onyama tests positive for coronavirus, President Buhari prays for his speedy recovery.
More COVID-19 palliatives for Nigerians in Zamfara State.
This is what the federal government is doing. We've brought these palliatives and we have also brought other interventions.
On Good Morning Nigeria today, we shall discuss the management of recovered assets.
The Buhari administration, since inception in May 2015, has set out to recover millions of Nigerians' looted funds stashed away in foreign accounts as part of its avowed anti-corruption crusade.
Now, the administration has over time matched words with action as tranches of the Abuja loot and several other stolen funds valued at hundreds of millions of dollars and other hard currencies have been recovered and then repatriated to the country from nations such as Switzerland and the United States of America.
And on the home front, proceeds of corruption, whether in cash or in assets, have been confiscated and forfeited by suspected beneficiaries on a light scale to serve as deterrent to others who may be contemplating pilfering from the nation's commonwealth.
No doubt, Kirian, the assets recovery scorecard of the Buhari administration has been impressive. However, keen watchers of the process have often expressed concern over the management of the assets and the need for an accurate database of all confiscated and recovered assets.
And obviously, this prompted the issuance of the Asset Tracing, Recovery and Management Regulations 2019 by the Office of the Attorney General of the Federation and Minister of Justice to address the perceived absence of coordination and proper management of seized, forfeited or confiscated assets, as well as to ensure transparency in the proceeds of disposal of forfeited assets.
Now, this arose from growing advocacy for harmonization and effective coordination in the assets recovery activities of the various anti-corruption agencies and the need to possibly have separate bodies or institutions to superintend over the recovered assets.
And repatriation of stolen monies ordinarily makes available additional resources for developmental projects. But how to target these financial resources into sectors, of course, that potentially benefit the victims of corruption. Now, who happens to be mostly the poor is where the challenge lies, Kingsley.
Indeed, Kirian, the million-dollar question is how can recovered assets be effectively managed to ensure that they are properly rechanneled for development and not relooted. Now, this is our focus on Good Morning Nigeria today. I'm Kingsley Osadolo, welcoming you to the program, reaching you as always live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority, and we are broadcasting from the nation's capital in Abuja.
You know, Kingsley, many Nigerians are making fun of that, relooted funds. Funds that were looted now be relooted.
Relooted, yeah. But actually, it's a serious issue
matter, actually,
to consider because the chief essence of spending resources and time in chasing, tracing, and then recovering those assets is to ensure that the money gets back into the Commonwealth and serves the purpose for which it was originally intended.
Exactly, and it took a very long time for funds from Switzerland and the US to come here, about nearly 10 years.
And some of the tranches are still out there.
Exactly. Right. I am Kirian Umayo, joining my colleague Kingsley to welcome you to this very first edition of Good Morning Nigeria for this week. We have a second topic today, and that has to do with non-interest banking and economic development. In a moment, we shall bring you the morning news and also serve you other complementary segments in the course of the program. Nolene Abel Ame is our anchor for the morning news. Good morning, Nolene.
Good morning, Kirian and Kingsley. Good morning, Nigeria. Here is the news.
The number of confirmed COVID-19 cases in Nigeria is now 36,663, following the announcement of 556 new cases by the Nigeria Center for Disease Control, NCDC, last night. Out of the 556 new cases, Edo State recorded the daily highest of 104 cases, followed by Lagos with 97 cases and the FCT with 70 cases. Benue State has 66 new cases, 61 in Oyo, 38 in Kaduna, 28 in Plateau, 19 in Osun, and 14 in Akwa Ibom. Rivers, Katsina, and Ondo states recorded 13 new cases each, while Ogun has 6 cases, Kano 5, Nasarawa 4, Gombe and Ekiti 2 cases each, and just 1 confirmed case in Borno State. Lagos State, being the epicenter of the COVID-19 pandemic in Nigeria, now has 13,438 confirmed cases, followed by FCT with 3,027 cases, while Oyo is third on the table with 2,167 cases. Out of the current 36,663 confirmed cases in Nigeria, 15,105 patients who recovered have been discharged, with the death toll now 789. Minister of Foreign Affairs Geoffrey Onyama has, via his Twitter handle, confirmed that so far a total of 93 Nigerians in Europe have been repatriated in the evacuation exercise coordinated by the Embassy of Nigeria in France in cooperation with Nigerian missions in Germany, Belgium, Holland, and Hungary. In the tweet, Onyama says the evacuees are Nigerians in France, Hungary, Romania, Poland, Norway, Germany, Holland, UK, and Canada. All passengers tested negative before boarding. In a separate tweet on Sunday, the Foreign Affairs Minister says he is heading for isolation in a health facility and praying for the best, having tested positive to coronavirus. The minister said he did a 4th test on Saturday at a first sign of a throat irritation, and this time it came out positive. Meanwhile, President Muhammadu Buhari has wished Minister of Foreign Affairs Geoffrey Onyama quick recovery as he goes into isolation after testing positive to COVID-19. President Buhari described the minister as a strong pillar of his administration, commending him for tirelessly working to stem the spread of coronavirus in the country as a member of the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19 and ensuring the safety of Nigerians abroad. The presidency wishes to respond to a number of opinion articles and stringent newspaper editorial on Sunday, which outrageously said President Muhammadu Buhari was not in control of his administration. A statement signed by the Senior Special Assistant to the President on Media and Publicity, Garba Shehu, notes that the fact that these baseless and appallingly mischievous attacks can freely be aired is itself evidence of the right to freedom of expression prevailing in the country today. The statement further adds that whether it is the issue of Ibrahim Magu, Godswill Akpabio, NDDC, NSITF, and the others, Nigerians are bound to hold differing opinions. Garba Shehu insists that to do a cover-up and not order audits and investigations as the president did would amount to a historic betrayal of the mandate and the faith placed in him by the Nigerian people. He maintains that President Buhari's integrity, uprightness, and probity are intact and well known, adding that ECOWAS, African Union, and the international community at large recognized President Buhari as champion of the anti-corruption fight in Africa. He assured Nigerians that President Buhari is determined not to be diverted by unfounded attacks, neither would he compromise the sacred mandate of Nigerians. He is determined to get justice for Nigerians on all these corruption cases being pursued. Minister of Humanitarian Affairs, Disaster Management and Social Development, Sadia Umar Farouk, says all mechanisms have been put in place to ensure direct allocation of COVID-19 palliatives and fertilizers to farmers affected by floods across the country. The minister stated this while inspecting warehouses where the products are kept for onward distribution to beneficiaries in Gusau, Zamfara State.
This is what the federal government is doing. We've brought these palliatives, and we have also brought other interventions to the state to cushion this effect to support the poor and the vulnerable.
The Council of Traditional Rulers commends President Muhammadu Buhari for the developmental projects going on in the southeast. The traditional leaders, in a meeting convened by elder statesman Prince Arthur Eze, said the southeast has not had it so good in terms of infrastructural development for many years now.
He gave us one of the best roads in Africa, Edinburgh Road. And they also want to beg him to build on each seaport for the boats who are the importers.
All the traditional rulers in Anambra State decided to come together to discuss their internal affairs and also to pass a resolution and support the President and Commander-in-Chief.
That's the morning news for now. The program continues with Kinsley and Kieran after this break. Good morning.
The main way coronavirus spread is when infected people sneeze and cough. Small droplets of fluid expelled by cough or sneezes are laced with viruses looking for new respiratory tracts to infect. When a sick person sneezes around someone who is healthy, the virus can land in the nose, mouth, or even the eyes, causing an infection. Symptoms can include fever, cough, shortness of breath. Symptoms may appear within 2 to 14 days. Seek medical advice if you develop symptoms and have been in close contact with a person known to have COVID-19, or if you live or have recently been in an area with ongoing spread of COVID-19. This message is brought to you by the Nigerian Television Authority, NTA, Africa's largest television network.
Close-up deep action with antibacterial formula and deep cleaning gel keeps your teeth clean and protected. Close-up deep action. Enjoy long-lasting fresh breath and more.
We have observed the lockdown. We have practiced the measures in order to curb the spread of the virus, but we can do better. The coronavirus spread is increasing daily, and only together can we cut down the numbers and defeat the spread of the virus. Remember, COVID-19 is not a death sentence, and a recovered patient cannot spread the disease. Do not stigmatize. Do not hesitate to report any case, or if you have come in contact with anybody that has been infected with COVID-19. If you have cough and fever, please stay at home and call your state hotline. Find state numbers at www.covid19.ncdc.gov.ng. Remember, it is for your own good and for the good of every Nigerian. Let us do better and defeat the virus. Together, we can do this. This message is brought to you by the Nigerian Television Authority, NTA, Africa's largest television network.
Disinfect and protect your home with Jik. Jik kills 99.9% of illness-causing germs. Disinfect floors, kitchen and bathroom surfaces, and wash white cloths, towels, and dishcloths with Jik bleach. Just Jik it. Disinfect and protect your home with Jik. Jik kills 99.9% of illness-causing germs. Disinfect floors, kitchen and bathroom surfaces, and wash white cloths, towels, and dishcloths with Jik bleach. Just Jik it.
Nigerians, coronavirus is dangerous. It can kill. When you see this sign, high fever, cough, shortness of breath, drowsiness, pneumonia, don't panic, don't hide, don't embark in self-medication. Promptly visit the nearest medical facility. Report all cases to the nearest hospital. Prevention is key. Avoid contact with infected persons. Avoid crowded areas as much as possible. Wash your hands regularly. Use hand sanitizers. Your life is precious. Stay alive. Live long, live right. This message is sponsored by the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture and the Nigerian Film Corporation. Nigerian Film Corporation, powering possibility.
Childhood non-stop. Non-stop childhood. Let's go.
Oh, stop. There are germs. You will fall sick. Daughter, why don't you stop them?
Mom, stopping the kids from playing stops the learning. That's why we stop the germs.
Indeed, Safeguard fights against germs. Safeguard removes 99% of germs.
Why don't you stop them? We have to stop. Not the kids, but...
You're watching Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. Business news is next, and here is Comfort Amodu.
With Nigerian's inflation rate hitting 12.56% in the month of June 2020 and consumer spending weakening, the National Bureau of Statistics report that panic buying and lockdown-driven prices increases prices of food in Nigeria and other parts of the globe, particularly South Africa and Ghana, in the past week showed food prices among the main contributors to headline inflation. Food index, which accounts for more than half the inflation basket, rose by 15.2% in June. The report by the National Bureau of Statistics also indicates that cost of imported foods such as high-quality rice rose by 28% from a year ago.
This oil is supposed to be 4,500, but now it's 6,000. They say it's not much, and people are not. They don't have money. Most of them, they price and go.
Meanwhile, member countries have commenced the implementation of the debt service suspension initiative. This followed the G20's decision to consider the option of extending the current debt payments suspension for the poorest countries towards the end of the year. Also, the G20 expects the standstill to make $14 billion available to confront the virus, according to Saudi Arabia's Finance Minister Mohammed Al-Jadaan. And so far, 42 countries have requested help under the plan, leading to the suspension of $5.3 billion in repayments. And in the Nigerian capital market, a total turnover of 1.16 billion shares worth 7.436 billion naira in 18,092 deals were traded by investors on the floor of the exchange, to a total of 901.542 million shares, valued at 13.453 billion naira. The exchange hence in 18,676 deals last week. With business news, Comfort Amodu.
Well, many thanks, Comfort, for that business package. Next for us now is newspaper review.
Baya Toyobe, our newspaper reviewer, is right here with us this morning. Baya, good morning and welcome.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. Hope you had a pleasant weekend.
Thank you. Good morning.
I have the leadership newspaper. Okay. Let's begin with that. And below the nameplate, Adamu Modibo dies at 63. Africa's foremost car inventor Izogo passes on. The story is on pages 2 and 7 Growing concerns over death of government housing scheme. That's on page 4. We have two riders to that. Nigerians demand affordable accommodation amid 17 million deficit. Governors seek revitalization of mortgage bank to boost scheme. Now, on the right-hand side of the newspaper, we have Arotile. NAF rules out foul play, hands 3 suspects over to police. Don't mistake COVID-19 for malaria, federal government warns. Foreign Affairs Minister, Benue Speaker, House member test positive. State Assembly shut down. That story is on page 4. That of NAF ruling out foul play on the death of Arotile is on page 8. Now below the photo story, which is showing Desmond Tutu, and of course our own Ajia Amina, Deputy Secretary General of the UN, they were in New York for a meeting. The PMB fully in charge of government, presidency replies critics. It's on page 10. Ondo, 3,127 delegates vote in APC governorship primary today. It's on page 4. Kogi government arrests notorious bandit, recovers arms. That's on page 2. 2020 UTME admission exercise to commence August 21. That's page 36. 20 housemates battle for 85 million naira in Big Brother season 5. It's on page 38. Customs Board decides on ACG Abubakar's case tomorrow. That's on page 7. Kinsley.
All right, Kieran, let's also take a look at the window page of the Punch newspaper. And the lead story is on Arotile, which indeed is a kicker. It says police to take over case may charge suspect with manslaughter. 2 riders, ex-classmate faces 7 years imprisonment if convicted. And slain pilot completed promotion exams recently, awaiting deployment. Details of that story you find on page 2. Then above the nameplate says AMCON develops strategies to recover 5 trillion naira debt. That's on page 35. NEDC reps grill Akpabio and managing director today over sundry allegations. Intrigues as 11 aspirants contest Ondo APC governorship ticket today. Magu, that's the kicker, prepare for surprises, presidency tells Nigerians. And below the photographs on the front page, you have 2020 UTME admission begins August 21st, says JAMB. That's on page 14. Beginning on the 21st of August, according to JAMB, but is left open-ended when it will close. 4 highway kidnappers gunned down in Kogi, page 42. National Assembly vehicles. Contractors petition Buhari, demand 875 million naira and threatened suit. Details on page 8. Foreign Affairs Minister Nyama tests positive for COVID-19. Policewoman, daughter, and 4 others abducted in Kaduna community. That's page 7. 15 soldiers, 17 bandits feared killed in Katsina gunfight. Details can be found on page 7. Bayo.
Thank you, Kinsley. Let's start with the human interest story on the latest from relating to the combat pilot, Tolulope Arotile. The Nigerian Air Force says preliminary investigations show that the pilot officer death was caused by a blunt force trauma to the head. This is sequel to a car driven by Nehemiah Adejo and 2 other occupants which struck her and in fact run over her. She sustained trauma to the head and suffered head injuries. One of the occupants was an accident emergency nurse and in fact administered first aid on her before she was taken to the hospital where eventually she gave up the ghost. Meanwhile, the Air Force says that from their investigation, they will now hand over the case to the police because it is a civil matter and the police will do the needful. Meanwhile, they have also consulted with the National Road Safety Commission to also delve into part of the investigation. The late officer was attached to Operation Gamma Aiki in Mina and had just completed a promotion examination and was waiting deployment to squadron pilot at 405 helicopter training command in Enugu. The suspects, if they are found guilty, could be charged. They could be charged for manslaughter, and they could serve up to 7 years. President Muhammadu Buhari has expressed concern and has wished Foreign Minister Geoffrey Yoma a quick recovery as he go into isolation for testing positive COVID-19. The president commended his tireless work, especially as a member of the presidential task force ensuring the safety of Nigerians. The president also knows that he was very diligent in attracting international support for Nigeria over the outcome of the pandemic and also to boost the economy. Meanwhile, by way of data, the number of persons who have tested positive in Nigeria as at this morning stands at 36,663. From last Friday, when we last met, Friday had 600, Saturday had 653. Yesterday we had 558. So between last Friday and now, we have 1,809 cases. There were 3 deaths on Friday, 6 on Saturday, and 11 yesterday. We now have 789 deaths. If we are to look at this distribution, Edo State this morning has registered 104 cases, coming into first position. And this is not far-fetched. You know, campaign activities have been highly on in Edo State, and this apparently is accounting for that. But the general picture, however, is that so far in Nigeria, we have had 212,201 persons tested. And out of these, we now have the 36,663. But the picture that it shows is very worrying in the sense that out of the 620, that's about 2%, their cases came from incidences of travel. Then 10,903, about 30%, came from contact for persons. But 24,592 are the sources of their infection are unknown. That is to say that community transmission is very prevalent, and we need to be very careful and take critical responsibility.
Yeah, not only that it's prevalent in the community transmission, but the point is that many people still do not care about the protocol that have been established for the prevention of coronavirus. And you see people ask them, where is your face mask? They say, it's in my pocket. You know, I say, it's not meant for your pocket. And this is what you see in marketplaces, you know, places where people gather, you know. So I'm just wondering how we'll be able to, curtail this, you know, if you don't obey simple instructions, right? And one could say that some people may be adhering to the protocol, yet they get it. For instance, the Minister of Foreign Affairs,
yes,
you know, who, of course, is a member of the task force, you know, who should know. One may be wondering, how did he get it? And all that. So it becomes a puzzle, Kingsley, you know, where, you know, somebody like him who knows what it takes to, you know, do the prevention and all of that, how did he get it in the first place? So,
there are some positive notations, however, because if you go by statistics, so far, 2 states have gone 15, one has gone 15 days without any case, that is Kogi. Sokoto has gone 14 days without any case at all. And if we are to go by World Health Organization standard, that 14 days means that they have reached the peak, and they will begin to bend the curve now. And if we can get all the states to achieve that kind of proficiency, then we are at home and on top of COVID-19 and will be able to bend the curve.
Well, that's an important point. But what Kieran was saying earlier about the apparent lack of personal responsibility by many persons, particularly in urban Nigeria, it's worrisome. Just by sheer instinct yesterday evening, I said, look, let me drive past Jabi Lake. You know, Jabi Lake is usually a point for fun seekers to gather. Yes. It was in the evening. And you wouldn't believe it, you know, both the fun seekers, revelers and whoever, no face mask, no social distancing, nothing whatsoever. On Saturday in the market is the same same scenario as Kieran is talking about. You ask them to say the face mask is in their pockets. So how do you? But these are young persons anyway. They are less susceptible, but they could be asymptomatic and then transmit it to persons who are more vulnerable or more susceptible with the COVID-19 virus. Just a story that, before we take other stories, there's a story that Kirian read. It's on the front page of the Leadership newspaper. It's above the nameplate. It's about the death of Adamu Modibo at the age of 63. If we could have that. Adamu Modibo, we pray for the repose of his soul. He was a frequent guest on Good Morning Nigeria. Whenever we're discussing economic issues or political issues, Adamu Modibo was always with us. If we can see that on the front page right now of the Leadership newspaper, may his soul rest in peace. He was from Adamawa State, very sound analyst, he was a former banker, and also was managing director of Sigma Pensions before he passed away. He was also a governorship aspirant in Adamawa State. On one occasion, I recall when we were discussing political party management and the role of leaders in their various domains, it was down to us, talking about what the consequences would be if you didn't, of course, follow along the trajectory of what was going on, but also how to reform the system. It's most unfortunate, Kirian, that he's passed away on the weekend.
Yes. The other interesting story is that Kaduna State government has directed civil servants to assume work today. They are to work in batches anyway. From all indications, a circular from the head of service of Kaduna State indicated that work now will be between 9 a.m. and 3 p.m. All permanent secretaries, directors general, chief executive of agencies are to work every day of the week. Officers on grade level 14 and above are to work 3 days of the week, Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, while grade level 7 to 13 will work only 2 days in the week, that is Tuesdays and Thursdays.
Well, I just start thinking, what difference does it make? Because everybody is involved, every section of workers are involved. If you involve the level 14 and above, then from level 7 and all that. So I want to understand the mechanism.
It's staggering, I think. The intention is to occasion some kind of to
grade lessen the number of people that gather. Yes. Okay.
Usually, you find that in ministries and agencies, those who are many, you are usually the lower ranks, levels 7 to 13. They are more than those in level. Yes.
Okay. We have a editorial from Daily Sun newspaper curbing excessive bank charges. But let's bring you in here because this banking charges is becoming a serious matter because banks, I think, they even charge. There's no uniformity in the charges. They're all charged differently, and of course, some of them are higher than others. So that does not speak well of the system.
Well, the editorial has happened that in banks there are as many as 9 various charges, and they listed some of them. They include stamp duty charge, value-added tax, card maintenance, current affairs maintenance, annual card maintenance, electronic transfer, ATM charges, SMM charges, and several others. You will recall that sometimes Kingsley had a cause to even complain on when we're talking about bank charges that when a card is issued to you once and you have paid for it, why do you have to subsequently charge every now and then for the same card every? So, and the editorial is happening on the fact that this idea of so many charges will eventually undermine financial inclusion. That is the idea of introducing more people to the banking system.
Well, that is true. Some may decide to create their own bank in their homes, although it's very dangerous. But we have nothing to do for now, except maybe the Central Bank of Nigeria comes up with a policy that will, of course, look into that matter. Otherwise, the banks are free to do what they like. Because before you know it, it's deducted. You just get the information that this has been deducted, and you have nothing to do about it. Right.
By the way, one of our running stories at the National Assembly, they have been acting clerks for the National Assembly, for the Senate, for the House of Rep, already appointed, and an acting secretary for the National Assembly Service Commission.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Those are issues, of course, as you said, running copies. We'll have the opportunity of returning to them. We didn't have the opportunity also of discussing in depth the preliminary investigation report of the preliminary investigation carried out by the Nigerian Air Force on the death of Arotile. But the headline speaks for itself that the suspect may be charged with manslaughter. We have the opportunity of taking a look at this one more time.
But NAF has even taken a stand, that they don't suspect any foul play.
That's right.
Based on the incident.
On the incident, how it happened. The incident.
I think those who are trying to sensationalize this accident should be careful, because the family should be allowed to grieve in private rather than subjecting it to all these sensations.
That's right. Bayo, thank you very much.
Thank you too.
See you tomorrow. It's Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the NTA. We'll take a short break now. When we return, we go ahead with our conversation.
Coronavirus, also known as COVID-19, is spreading at an alarming rate all over the globe, including Nigeria. With the number of infected persons in Nigeria increasing daily, prevention is better than cure. Coronavirus has no cure. The virus spreads from one person, who affects two persons, and by the time the affected person is isolated, the two persons have affected four, and it keeps spreading. You must take preventive measures to save yourself and that of the people around you. Always wash your hands with soap and water. Put distance between yourself and others. Whenever you cough or sneeze, cover your mouth. Clean and disinfect surfaces. Stay at home if you're sick and contact the proper authorities. Together, we can cut down the spread of the coronavirus. This message is brought to you by the Nigerian Television Authority, NTA, Africa's largest TV network.
Breakfast your day. Every day.
Nestle, good food, good life.
Ankara shopping with the right place.
That one no fine.
You know nice.
No, it's too dull.
This one.
Oh wow, it's beautiful. Omo, this fabric. It gon' fade though.
Yeah. Look, make I tell you something. The new area Ankara, it go take good care of it.
Right?
Not lie, not true.
And the price?
Cheap.
Try new Ariel on your Ankara and colors now.
Coronavirus is real. Steps to avoid this pandemic. Wash your hands regularly or sanitize your hands. Keep social and physical distancing. Avoid crowded places. Stay at home unless absolutely necessary. Don't touch your eyes, nose, or mouth if your hands are not clean. Avoid the spread of coronavirus. Coronavirus is real.
Well, we thank you for staying with us on Good Morning Nigeria up to this moment. Of course, our conversation this morning is on managing recovered assets, and to set the tone for the conversation, here is a backgrounder by Abdulsalam Jibril.
It is a known fact that the Muhammadu Buhari administration, since assumption of office, has put the fight against corruption and the recovery of stolen assets at the forefront of its agenda. Over the past 5 years, the administration has been making several efforts to recover looted assets, both locally and internationally, including persistent advocacy for the cooperation of foreign governments of countries where Nigerian stolen assets are stashed away. These efforts have yielded significant results as the administration has been able to forfeit, freeze, and recover huge amounts of looted cash in both local and foreign currencies and other assets in the past 5 years. While the asset recovery efforts have been impressive and laudable, experts say the assets recovered so far are difficult to measure due to a substantial lack of transparency in data around recovered assets. They expressed concern that agencies involved in the recovery process release little or no data on recovery processes, including description of the cases, status, amounts, and most importantly, how the large amounts recovered are to be used. This lack of transparency, they insist, come with a strong risk that in a country with widespread corruption, recovered assets could be relooted again. The big question is, how can recovered assets be effectively managed to ensure they are not relooted, and how can they be rechanneled for development? Guest on Good Morning Nigeria will speak to the issues in a moment.
Many thanks, Abdul Salam, for that background. Joining us now to discuss the issue, would like to welcome the head Asset Recovery and Management Unit in the Federal Ministry of Justice. That's Ladidi Baratu Mohammed. Ladidi Baratu, pleasure to have you with us on Good Morning Nigeria.
Good morning, Nigerians. Thank
also
you.
Here with us in the studios is the Director, Asset Tracing, Recovery and Management of the Independent Corrupt Practices and Other Related Offences Commission. That's ICPC, Mr. Adedayo Kayode. Mr. Kayode, delighted to have you with us.
Good morning. Good morning, Nigeria. Good to be here.
And joining us from our Benin Network Center is Reverend David Ugolo. He's the Executive Director, African Network for Environment and Economic Justice. It's good to have you with us today on Good Morning Nigeria.
Very much, my brother.
Right, once again, I'd like to have all of you join us. But let's just, in addition to the background by our correspondent, let's have from the insiders now a sketch, if you like, of what's been happening in recent years with regard to asset recovery and management. But first, recovery, because fairly frequently you get to read reports of forfeitures, whether interim, in most cases final, and then repatriation of loot from abroad on account of the agreements that Nigeria has signed with a number of those countries. And you also get to hear of all kinds of measures taken by the anti-corruption agencies. Mostly you see the inscriptions on properties on the walls, EFCC, keep off, ICPC, under investigation, and so on and so forth. So give us a sense of what has happened, say in 5 years, with regard to asset recovery from the criminal elements who've been convicted.
Thank you very much. By way of background, let me start by saying the whole concept of the asset recovery has its basis under the United Nations Conventions Against Corruption, which is an international instrument signed by Nigeria, like other 186 member countries. And particularly in that convention, chapter 5 of that convention spoke extensively about asset recovery and what countries are expected to do as far as asset recovery is concerned, including international cooperation and repatriation of those assets from foreign jurisdictions. Then you come down to the FATF, which is the Financial Action Task Force, which is also an intergovernmental global body that make policies on money laundering and as well as terrorism financing. Nigeria has made concerted efforts from 2015. I would like to speak specifically from 2015 during this administration to date, has made concerted effort to be a member of that Financial Action Task Force for many reasons. Now, this Financial Action Task Force has recommendations that it makes for member countries or intended countries to be members to put in place as a measure before it admits those countries. And part of those recommendations, there are 40 recommendations, part of them, particularly recommendation 3, 4, and 38, specifically talks about asset recovery regimes, framework for asset recovery. Now, since the coming of this administration, that is in 2015, we have done so much. As far as structure for asset recovery is concerned, in fairness to this country, I think we have sufficient framework in place because most of our anti-corruption agencies are well equipped. Their establishment acts have provided adequate provisions for them to do recoveries. So we don't have issue as far as recoveries are concerned. And of course, that is locally. When you talk on the international front, you talk about international recovery. The Attorney General is the central authority. And through bilateral, mutual legal assistance and other treaties, the Office of the Attorney General conducts and carries out international recoveries. Why? Because most of those international recoveries, irrespective of whether there are court proceedings related to the recoveries, at the point of repatriation, there will still be a government-to-government interface before the monies are repatriated. So those are the processes that have been used in recoveries as far as Nigeria is concerned, both locally and internationally. And of course, the local ones we are talking about, the statutory or establishment acts of those agencies specify the modes or modalities with which they do their recoveries.
All right, thank you. Let's turn to Adedayo Kayode, who is the Director Asset Tracing, Recovery and Management of the Independent Corrupt Practices and Other Related Offences Commission. Well, most times, many Nigerians would think that ICPC and EFCC are doing similar jobs. In essence, that there wouldn't have a need, even to have ICPC in the first place. But then you need to explain out the actual responsibility of ICPC with respect to asset recovery and where it divorces from the responsibility of EFCC. Now, I also would like you to delve into the issue of framework for asset recovery, whether you are satisfied with the framework for asset recovery set out, for ICPC, and if yes, to what extent, has that been used, in terms of tracing recovery and, of course, management of assets, recovered from those persons or group of persons in Nigeria?
Thank you very much. First, I'd like to take a rider from where my colleagues stopped. The ICPC Act make very clear provision for recovery of asset, for seizure of asset. And like it said earlier, there's distinction between when it is an interim forfeiture and when it's final forfeiture. Now, most time there is this general hype in the press about the figure that has been recovered without making a distinction between when it's an interim forfeiture or when it is final. And there's always a huge difference by the time it gets to final. So you could have two different scenarios and two different figures at the end of the day. The ICPC Act in Section 37 gives the Commission the power, gives the chairman and its designated officer the power to seize any asset when it presumed that it is related to the commission of crime. And going back to your earlier questions, ICPC set up primarily to look at corrupt practices and then to look at the issue of corruption. And the Act defined what corruption is. It defines corruption by the forms. It talks about bribery, extortion, talks about abuse of office. So the form of corruption was used to describe corruption in the ICPC Act. And clearly, like I said earlier, Section 37 gives you power to seize any asset that you presume is a proceed of a corrupt act. When you go further in Section 38, it makes provisions for how these assets so seized can be handled. One, it talks about the fact that if in the course of the investigation before it's concluded or while prosecution is going on, this asset can be handled in about three basic ways. One, you can bond in the hand of the person, meaning that at the end of the day, when judgment is delivered, he has to deliver that asset or twice the value of that asset. Secondly, you can appoint a manager. If it's a going concern, you can appoint a manager to oversee the operation of that asset for that period when prosecution is on. Like we just had one, a school was seized somewhere in Ilorin in Kwara State. And all that the commission had to do is approach the Federal Ministry of Education, who appointed and posted a principal that will manage and then oversee the affairs of the school for it not to go down. Because so many things are involved now. We look at the multiplier. You look at the number of people that will be thrown out of job. You look at the effects on the economy. You look at many people who will go hungry. You look at many people that will be sent down the poverty line. So it's the interest of the commission that these people should be considered. These are the qualitative factors that have qualitative factors of our decision, not just the quantitative. And so it runs as a going concern, managed by competent managers who are knowledgeable in that field, pending the final determination of the case. And then the ICPC also give you power to return it to the victim. If the asset is finally recovered, you can return to the victim by virtue of the power of the ICPC. It should also be noted that ICPC had earlier on before now made a proposal to the Federal Ministry of Justice, precisely to the Office of the Honorable Minister of Justice and Attorney General of the Federation, that an interagency committee can be set up to manage recovered assets. This interagency committee can comprise of representatives of Federal Ministry of Justice, Federal Ministry of Finance, probably the National Assembly, and the various recovering agencies. So that it's not just managed by just one agency, can sit down in a committee and oversee the management of recovered assets, pending the final determination by an act of how this should be. On the alternative, a second alternative could be an asset management agency exists in the country today. We have the HAMCOM, Asset Management Company of Nigeria. This can be saddled with this responsibility of managing recovered assets instead of us allowing that agency to wind up in 2023 as is most likely to be.
All right, Adedayo, thank you very much for your opening salvo. Just before we bring in the Reverend David Ugolo in our Benin Network Center, I want to Ladidi again to speak to the regime of asset recovery. Who is the repository of information with regard to recovered assets, interim or final forfeiture?
Okay. Supposedly, it's the Attorney General. And let me tell you what happened. Before now, there is no framework at all in the country for asset management. Like I said...
In the absence of the framework, what was happening?
Well, pursuant to certain laws, particularly the law enforcement laws, like the ICPC Act, the EFCC Act, the ACJA, and a host of others, like the NFIU and the MLA Act, the Attorney General took the bold step in 2019 to make a regulation. Before then, there was a regulation, a 2012 regulation that was made by the then Attorney General, Adoke, pursuant to the powers of the Attorney General in the EFCC Act. But in 2019, after all the incidents of the legislature passing the Pogue Bill, at the point of signing, when it went to the president, there were some from different quarters, stakeholders vehemently opposed to Mr. President's assenting to that bill. And of course, classical of Mr. President, he said, if there are objections, he will not sign it. Go back and address those issues and agree among yourselves before you return it for assent. In the course of those, you know, in my opening, I mentioned the FATF, Nigeria's membership, for membership for FATF. Somewhere along the line, between January 2019 to June 2019, we were aggressively pursuing the membership of the FATF. And that's
the Financial
Action Task Force, yes, which is the intergovernmental global body that makes policy for financial system for every country. Now, the Attorney General, I remembered in a letter, we wrote to the FATF because they were not ready to take Nigeria as a member due to certain things that are missing in the framework, particularly for asset management. And we gave our word that Nigeria is going to pass the Pogue Bill, just like the NFIU Act was passed, as well as the Mutual Legal Assistance Act. Unfortunately, as at the plenary in June, that was last year, June, in 2019 in Orlando, the act was not passed. The bill was not assented to by Mr. President. Why? Because some of those stakeholders objected to the establishment of the agency and some other issues that arose out of the bill. So what we did was we became creative in the Office of the Attorney General. We came up with a regulation. And this regulation was issued pursuant to the extant laws that establish those acts. Because, like, for instance, in the EFCC Act, the powers are with the Attorney General to make regulations in relation to asset disposal. Now, we made that regulation, and in that regulation, we specifically brought all the stakeholders outside the law enforcement agencies. We brought in other stakeholders. For instance, Ministry of Finance, Accountant General, even the Central Bank, and other people who are involved in the financial up and down of the disposal of assets. We also created a committee, an interim committee, and made provision in the regulation for establishment of a central database. And this central database, I can tell you, it has been established in the Office of the Attorney General just before we go for the COVID lockdown. Because the regulation was passed in 2019. So a part of the things that are contained in the regulation is the establishment of a central database. And that central database was established, and we issued, in the regulation, there are timelines within which each agency will submit data to that central database. Unfortunately, it was not possible because of the COVID, and of course, we allowed it. But immediately,
during COVID, work from home, so why was it not possible?
Well, we gave that latitude because I know that a lot of things were allowed during the COVID. There are latitude that were given in different sectors, and the Ministry of Justice or the justice sector is not different. But immediately we came back, we issued letters to the agencies reminding them that, look, you need to feed in data into the central database. And of course, a lot of them, within the shortest period of time, have responded. With the exception of few, they have responded, and some have established desks in their various offices that will be populating those data and working in collaboration with the Asset Recovery Unit. Some have designated desk officers. For instance, the director here, I remembered he is the person from ICPC that has been designated to work with the Office of the Attorney General in order to populate the data they have and feed into the central database. So for all intent and purpose, I would tell you that Attorney General is the repository for the data, but it is now work in progress because we're just trying to collate those data from the agencies.
Yeah, obviously, there's a little, administrative or management quagmire,
as you will say, Kieran.
because we've been recovering assets even before this administration came to be, and there is no central base, central database for what is being recovered from individuals and organizations. That is striking, and I don't know how many will believe that, because if you are recovering and it is being relooted, then it makes nonsense of all the efforts of ICPC, the Office of Attorney General, and of the EFCC in the entire, fight against corruption and recovering of funds. Now we hear about plea bargain, which people have, touted that look, there's a plea bargain when you have stolen some money. Perhaps there will be a bargain whereby you forfeit this, you take this, and what have you. So Nigerians are really confused about this situation, which is the reason for this particular edition of Good Morning Nigeria. Let's lay the whole thing bare and see where the problem is coming from. So let's bring in Reverend David Ugola. So you have listened to the lady and gentleman here, who have very strong information regarding collation or tracing and management of recovered funds. What is your take in what they have been able to say so far? Because, of course, Kisla and I have been able to ask questions that brought out some very burning issues, concerning recovery of funds, its tracing and management.
Again, thank you for the opportunity to join you in this very important issue. First, I also want to thank my co-panelists, Madam Ladidi and Didayo from ICPC. If you listen to them and the questions that you raised, it's clear that there is a gap in our asset recovery regime in Nigeria, and that Madam Ladidi alluded to. Even though Nigeria is one of those countries who have signed on to the UN Convention Against Corruption, and in particular the Chapter 5, Beyond that, politically and internationally, Nigerian government have taken a very frontline position on issue of asset recovery. But back home, there's been big challenge, and the challenge has to do with lack of coordination among the Anti-Corruption Agency and the Ministry of Justice. Even though the President makes the issue of asset recovery as a top priority, both locally and internationally, even just recently in his letter to the EU government, he also alluded to the importance of asset recovery. The challenge we have faced is about the management of assets in the country. It's a huge problem. And that is the reason why the not signing on the proceeds of crime bill into the country is a big challenge. Why has it been a problem that EFCC, ICPC, and other anti-corruption agencies are not able to collaborate with the Ministry of Justice to put in place a framework that will manage the asset? Because that's the real contentious issue. What we are talking about over 5 trillion naira of asset in the last 10 years that these anti-corruption agencies are dealing with. Now, if you have to manage assets that would benefit Nigeria, you definitely have to take politicians' interference how those assets is managed. Even the anti-corruption agency don't have the expertise to manage those assets. So what has happened and the challenge we have faced in the country is that the president has to take leadership. Like Madam Ladidi noted, the Ministry of Justice came up with a regulation. And in that regulation, in absence of a proceeds of crime bill that would have set the strategy and way forward for managing assets in the country, the president would have taken the leadership in putting in place a coordinated approach that would have informed how to proceed in managing the assets we have recovered in the country. But that didn't happen. And what you have seen is that even assets that we have recovered so far in the country, there is no place you can point to where you can refer that this is the amount of the asset we have recovered. And what has it sent? It has sent a wrong signal, both locally and internationally. And even though that the international community at different points have cooperated with Nigeria, that has led to the Abuja 1, the Abuja 2, the Abuja 3, and now we are also talking about Abuja 4. The problem we have faced in the country is that the anti-corruption agency, and I am very happy that Madam Ladidi was referring to stakeholders. When you say stakeholder, we have to be very precise, so that if we are not precise, we are not able to provide solution. Because one of the key outcome of this process will really help the president and even the presidential committee that is currently investigating the EFCC. There are two things that has happened. EFCC have not been cooperating with the Ministry of Justice. And because of this lack of cooperation, issue of asset that has been recovered, either interim or final, one cannot point to where they are stored, the information. And because of this, they've been big challenge. And because of the lack of coordination between the EFCC and the Ministry of Justice, there's been problem in the country. Now, who will resolve that problem? Is the president. And the National Assembly, in the last section, they were able to pass the proceeds of crime bill. But unfortunately, because of disagreement among these stakeholders, the president couldn't assent to the bill. And that has led to what we have seen today. If we had had the proceeds of crime bill passed into law, and there is a central base on the assets seized by the anti-corruption agency, what we are having today, the crisis we are having today in EFCC, we will not have it. And the crisis that has now led to Nigerians now asking question, what is the amount of asset we have recovered so far? What is the benefit of campaigning for asset to be returned from the international community? Those issues will inform the fact that what is the response from the presidency? And unfortunately, that response hasn't come. And when proceed of crime bill was not passed into law, that again brought a lot of challenge. unfortunately, the UN Convention Against Corruption went through the first and second review process. And in that two review process in Nigeria, there were specific recommendations. And among those recommendations was the issue to address the absence of asset recovery management regime in Nigeria. The Nigerian government and other countries, including the US and the UK government, in 2017 met in Washington. Madam Ladidi was also there. Key anti-corruption agencies were also there. And I led the civil society in Nigeria to that conference in Washington. We all agree, which led to the Global Forum on Asset Recovery Principle. And in one of those key principles is about transparency and accountability in the asset recovery management. But coming back home, putting that principle in practice has been a challenge. Nigerian government also signed on to be open government partnership. And in that partnership, one of the commitments is also on asset recovery, on the need to strengthen interagency cooperation. The challenge is that that commitment has not been put into practice in Nigeria. In moving forward, this challenge that we are facing today in Nigeria is for the president to provide leadership to ensure that the outcome of this ongoing investigation, not only just calling names, because name will not solve the problem. The problem didn't start with Magu or Malami. These two will go. The problem will continue. It is only when we put in place institutional framework that will take away the issue of management from this anti-corruption agency, because it's not their business. Their business should be tracing and recovering. Professionals should be allowed to manage the asset, because we're talking about trillions of naira. Today, we are in a trying period. The Nigerian government needs all the resources they require to face the challenge of COVID-19 pandemic. And you can see that the government is going borrowing. The asset we have recovered domestically and the asset we have recovered internationally, if properly managed and put in the professional's hand, we will not be talking about borrowing. But what has happened is that EFCC sees an asset, they want to manage it. ICPC sees an asset, they want to manage it. Customs sees an asset, they want to manage it. So in the face of this challenge, the expertise is not there. And then you see the issue of corruption emerging. And this has been the source of the problem in the country we are facing today. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, the Reverend David Ugolo, for your comments, very elaborate comments there. But we need to make a clarification here. We do not have access to the proceedings of the presidential panel that is investigating the EFCC. So we cannot make comments on that, and we should refrain from making comments on that. And more particularly, as you can see from the composition of the panelists, there's none from the EFCC who is here. We understand that, of course, their top management has been sent on suspension in order to facilitate the ongoing investigation. That is not the purpose of our conversation. We could use references, but not to discuss their details when they are not in a position to respond to all of that. But we appreciate the comments that you have made in terms of highlighting where the challenges lie and then how we can proceed. Let's bring in again Adedayo Kade of ICPC. What do we know about the agencies of government that are empowered to seize or recover assets that are deemed to be proceeds of crime? I'm asking this question so that you don't just say, oh, well, I'm ICPC, I don't know of others. The presumption is that you don't operate in silos, that there's some measure of cooperation or collaboration, even though it's not deep enough. Yes.
I want to appreciate that question. And I like your conclusion by saying that, of course, there must be some levels of cooperation. It might not be as deep or as robust as it should be, but we have several forums where we meet and then we exchange information, exchange intelligence, and we exchange ideas. And we also have ways in which we corroborate on our assignments, and we also serve in interagency committee, even on investigations. ICPC, as an example, there are some cases that we just looked at, and by our analysis does not fall under our mandate. We transfer it to any of the other agencies that has a mandate for it, NAPTIP, EFCC, and whichever one. And we've also had instances when some of these other agencies have also sent in cases to us that they believe fall squarely under the mandate of ICPC. So that, I don't know if that answers your questions.
Yeah, well, that's specific to ICPC.
Yeah.
Who else do you know of that also engages in asset recovery or asset forfeiture, besides the ones that we are fairly familiar with, ICPC and EFCC? Which other agency of government does this?
Most of the law enforcement agencies do. EFCC, like you said, ICPC, NAPTIP does. And the police too do. All these law enforcement agencies have specific power relating to their area. NDLEA does. So we all have specific areas and specific kind of assets that falls under our purview that we recovered when it's in line or is a proceed of the crime that we are set up to investigate.
Thanks. Haji Aladidi, you wish to clarify this, but since the Ministry of Justice presumably has an overview of law enforcement in the country, yes, who else is empowered? And then when they do seize those assets that are deemed to be proceeds of crime, what do they do with them?
Well, basically those are the agencies that he has mentioned, and fortunately these are agencies that the Attorney General also supervise, with the exception of the Nigerian Custom, whose laws also give them power to do the forfeiture and to deal with the asset as appropriate. Outside that, I don't think there is any other one. But please, let me crave your indulgence to go back on what Reverend David has said concerning the president taking leadership. By way of history, I want to put it on record so that Nigerians will understand what has happened. In 2017, when there were issues of transparency relating to assets, and following the May 2016 summit in London, which gave rise to the GFA, the Global Forum on Asset Recovery, that was held in the same 2017 in Washington, the first, that is the maiden one, where Nigeria is one of the 5 countries that were used as pilot countries on issue of asset recovery. The president established a presidential audit committee. I want Nigerians to know about this. This presidential audit committee did the auditing of all the law enforcement agencies, including the Federal Ministry of Justice. The whole essence of the audit was to be able to establish what has been recovered in the law enforcement agencies, what are the framework that are in place, and also make recommendation, and to know if there are other infractions that maybe needs to be corrected, which might have been which may have resulted as due to lack of legislation. This audit committee submitted an interim report, and in that interim report, they advised that certain interim measure should be put in place for the recovery and for management of assets. And of course, Mr. President directed the Attorney General to put those measures in place. That is the responsibility that Mr. President took as far as the issue of framework for management of assets is concerned. And as an offshoot of that, the regulation was established. And let me also take you back the efforts that were made before now. Reverend Ogolo mentioned the GFA principles. Pursuant to the 2017 GFA convention that was held in Washington, the Attorney General's office, in an effort to establish a framework, a business plan for asset management in Nigeria, brought in the United Nations, the STAR Initiative, World Bank, to come on a scoping mission to Nigeria, which they did. They came with their experts, and a 2-day sensitization program was organized by the Office of Attorney General for all the law enforcement agencies. They were there. These 2 days, the whole idea was to rub minds and to bring out the gaps we have in all our establishment laws so that we'll come up with a framework for asset recovery. After that, we went further to do an in-house workshop for all those law enforcement agencies. But unfortunately, with all these efforts, it did not yield, or it did not get the necessary collaboration and cooperation that is required from those stakeholders. Nonetheless, in spite of all the objections and the reservations that were raised, we still went ahead to establish that regulation. And for the records, we know that Mr. President exercises some of his powers through his ministers. So, to say the least, let's be fair to Mr. President. He has done the needful. He has directed his minister to take charge and exercise some of those things. But non-compliance or non-cooperation came from some of those stakeholders, and which unfortunately has led us to some of the places that we are.
Yes, and that's why I want you to, and that's why, okay, go on.
Yeah. Go on. Okay, I need to speak on that area. Reacting to what Ladidi just said, law enforcement agencies will obviously not deliberately or will not even choose not to cooperate with Ministry of Justice, especially we are all working for public interest. But there's one particular point that we have always tried to make. The committee that will manage recover asset, or any agency that will come out eventually and manage recover asset, should separate the role of recovery and management. The various law enforcement agencies have the power in the course of the investigation for recovery. If that same committee that will be saddled with the responsibility of management will also encroach into responsibility of investigating and recovering, there will be duplicity. It's going to be duplicating the work of the recovering agencies. And that is just one thing that we have said should always be separated. We are not averse to, like I said earlier, even the ICPC has proposed to the ministry, set up an interagency committee to manage recover asset. You can also choose to pass the responsibility to any asset management agency that we have in existence now. An agency can even come out if you still choose, if the government still choose to create a new agencies, but let that agency do not duplicate the responsibility of law enforcement agencies in tracing and in recovery of us. We can trace, we can recover, record it, report it, and transfer. Let it be managed. I also need to make a separation. There's a difference between movable asset and immovable. Movable assets which are in banks, when we recover this, it goes straight into the recovery account in CBN. So we don't even have control on that. But for the immovable, the physical one, which we record, which we assign numbers to, can effectively be transferred over to the into any committee that is created or any agency that is issued, and let it be properly managed.
Yes, Ladidi, I'm coming back to you, because your ministry, the agencies follow the purview of your ministry, and we are here talking about collaboration and coordination. Now, what is that element that is missing, between you and the agencies that has led to the point where there is lack of coordination? Is it as a matter of a disrespect, or as a matter of I'm in charge, right? Because why I ask this question is this: if you are in charge of agencies and you give out instructions or basically frameworks that should be obeyed or followed, and then it is not followed, and you sit back, looking as if you don't have any powers to be able to, enforce the law to get something happening. Now, I'm so confused about the fact that, look, that an agency is not collaborating or coordinating with the ministry that is overseeing it. Like, if you recover an asset, you don't have the responsibility of managing the asset. Now, you don't have a database. You don't give us proper information that will determine the next line of action. Right. So, please let us know how the ministry intends to, continue its lead in this very sector of issue of corruption and what have you. What is going to be on ground going forward to see that, look, every recovered asset is noted and in the data and known, and then the management form specified?
Thank you very much. But first of all, let me speak about disrespect or no disrespect. I don't think it's an issue. I don't want to speak to specific, but I want to speak generally. I'm a civil servant, and I know that there are public service rules. This public service rules has made provision for supervision.
That's right.
You always, even the most junior cadre of officer in public service has a supervisor, has a superior officer. And it's the same thing with the ministries, the larger picture of ministries and parastatals. It is one thing to make rules, and it is another for people to abide by those rules. And of course, in accordance with those public service rules, where there are disobedience, there are omissions or commissions that may lead to infractions or have led to infractions, certain processes are followed. And some of these processes are already unveiling. So that is as far as I can tell you, that the ministry takes step to do whatever is needed. There are things that you don't enforce, but you are guided by the rules to take steps to do, and which we can see is playing out. And fortunately, it's not a general principle or a general problem that applies all over. Like I have told you, it's work in progress. This issue of collation is ongoing. If not for the COVID, I'm sure by now we would have finished the collation. It's like the director here, he's the person that we work in collaboration with from the ICPC. And like I said, the police, NDLA, and a host of all those other agencies are complying. They are responding. And for Reverend David, he is somebody on the CSO side that we have even worked together to establish this database. He has assisted us, they have given us technical assistance and support in the collation of those open source data that we already have. And then now we're waiting for the in-house data. So there is no issue of what Ministry of Justice will do. The public service guides everybody in office.
I was just wondering, again, before we bring in David Ugolo, in terms of management of recovered assets, management would also incorporate utilization. Now, Adedayo Kayode tells us that if it is cash at bank, that goes to the central bank. And assuming it's a final forfeiture order, it means that the convict would no longer have access to such funds. Now, and presumably you have such funds coming in from a number of agencies. What do we do with such cash that is now in possession of the central bank? What is the money utilized for? We know, for instance, that in terms of the Abacha tranches that have been repatriated, the conditions stipulated what they should be utilized for. Some of them have been utilized for purposes of the SIP, that is the Social Investment Program. Some others have also now been targeted for the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway reconstruction, the Niger Bridge, and so on and so forth. But you have a wide variety of others. There are all kinds of other, not so petty persons who have been convicted. How are these monies utilized? I'm just talking about cash, not even property, not even the fixed assets yet, because the former Minister of Finance was with us on Good Morning Nigeria once, and she was saying that they were going to use those or convert those assets to government offices. And I said, look, watch out for land utilization, to say if it is in a residential area, how can you use it for an office? So what do we know about the utilization of the monies within possession of the central bank? Okay,
it still goes back to the regulation. The 2019 regulation is actually very extensive because some of those provisions in that regulation we extracted from the draft poke bill to give life to the regulation. One, there are provisions that when monies are collected, sent to the central bank, like most of the agencies do, they maintain accounts in the central bank, even at the Attorney General's office, we have a federal government recovery account where all recoveries go to. The provision inside the regulation is that if this information are fed to the central database, we know at what stage the asset is in entry for future. We know at what stage, because the way the database is built, from seizure, confiscation, it is reported. And once it is reported, at the end of the day, we know what the proceedings are, because it's real time. We know what the proceedings are, then at what stage we know what the status of those assets are. Is it still under, between this period and this period, is it under interim forfeiture or is it under final forfeiture? Of course, if it is under interim forfeiture, the possibility is that it is still being under investigation or it is still being prosecuted. And if it is under final forfeiture, it means it belongs to the federal government. It is reported there, it is in the database. If it is cash, the Attorney General has the responsibility of reporting to the Minister of Finance that these monies are available in account number so, this amount. So from there, we have discharged our own duties. And it will now be the responsibility of the Minister of Finance. These are all contained in the regulation. It is now going to be the responsibility of the Minister of Finance to approach Mr. President with this fund. And let me tell you, like the audit committee, the Presidential Audit Committee made regulation And the president gave directive that all funds that are recovered, proceeds of crime, will be used for high-impact projects. And you can see that is demonstrated by the recent Abuja 3 that was repatriated from the US. That is why it went to that presidential infrastructure fund, infrastructure, which is the Lagos, Ibadan, Abuja, Kano, as well as the second Niger bridge. So those are the things that Mr. President directed. And it brings me back to the issue that Mr. President has already taken steps. He has taken leadership. He has directed his minister to carry out those powers. And the minister has done the needful. He has issued directives or regulations or requests to those agencies that he's overseeing. And the body now, the bulk has shifted. It's for them to either collaborate or cooperate or to comply. And if they don't, of course, they'll be guided by the public service rules.
You want to come in there?
Yes, sir. So simple. I agree with everything she said. And then I also need to say that based on the ICPC Act, sorry, I have to keep referring to this. Section 38 make provision for how this should be treated. One of the provision is that it should be returned to the victim. Now, if the victim is federal government, like she said, from the CBN account, it moves to the Treasury, in which the Federal Minister of Finance take charge. If it's recovered from states, if it's state-owned fund that is being recovered, we return it to the various states. We have returned money several times to various states, Lagos state government, those state government, different state government. The money are recovered on their behalf, or is the money of that state that's being diverted or misappropriated, we return it to them. And sometimes it could even be an individual. Anyway.
I would like to, sorry, if you allow me, I'd like to chip in there. This same regulation we're talking about has made provision for a situation where the federal government makes recovery on behalf of subnationals. Yeah. There are procedures for it, because we also make recoveries, international recoveries, on behalf of states.
Yes.
And we have made provision for it.
Now, what is the provision?
The provision is that money is recovered, like he said, in accordance with the UNCAC provision, will go back to the victims. If, for instance, state government takes a person of political exposed persons, take from their government, and it is recovered, it ought to go back to that government. That is what UNCAC...
Is it going to them?
Yes.
Yes, it goes to them. It goes to them, and I can tell you...
This is a very important question. Like
no, it goes to them, because I can tell you that as it is, there are monies, let me see, $1 million. We are working on it assiduously to send... To repatriate it. We have completed the recovery process. We are going to repatriate it to Nigeria. And these monies are going to Bayelsa. Because as it is, through, I think, 2-3 attorney generals or so, the last government...
Jolly, Yabe, Taraba, Joshua Dariye, Plateau, what happens? Yeah.
I will not...
they've been convicted.
Well, I will not speak to that right now. Okay. I am speaking the attorney general's office. We have requested, because with common with foreign recoveries, foreign repatriations, those governments will ask that what will the asset be used for? It should be used for the benefit of the people. And we have requested those states to provide projects that we will submit to the government of United States. And of course, they have done, they even submitted some projects at some point. We rejected it. We said, no, this is not for the benefit of the people. And you need to do something that will be beneficial to more people. Yeah. For instance, the health sector, and we are working on that.
I think it's very important. It's very important this aspect, was raised, because the last judgment, I wouldn't call names now. The last judgment that we had, people were, asking questions as to where the funds recovered is going to go. Is it going to go to Abia State, or is it going to go to federal government? And it raised a lot of doubts, as to where it goes.
But I should make this
clarification. But you have made it clear now, at least that
there's one more clarification I need to make. The ICPC had give independence to that commission. However, in the exercise of your independence, you cannot stand as an island. So there must be collaboration. And that's why you see that for us in ICPC, we have proposed, let us have an agency, or let's have an interagency committee in which we all collaborate. I'm also happy that Aditi said the moment the letter came, we responded. Yours truly happens to be the person nominated to even serve on the committee.
Okay.
So, hitherto, all what we have done is based on the ICPC Act.
Okay, so when ICPC recovers funds that belong to a state, you send such monies to the state, right? As stipulated in the act establishing you. Fine. David Ugolo, I want you to come in. No, Lalidi. Let's get from the CSO point of view. You have spoken well enough, and you are so explicit. What you have said is very clear and understandable. Let's bring in Ugolo once again for him to also dissect some of the issues you have raised, because from his point of view, the Nigerian, will understand perfectly well whether what the framework of recovery, tracing, and management of assets is working or not. So please, Ugola, come in here and deliberate on the issues that raised with respect to, first of all, utilization of recovered assets. Another is ensuring that whatever fund that is the asset that is recovered goes back to the victim of that exercise. So let's hear you on these issues and even more.
I must thank Adedayo from the ICP, who has made very clear explanation on the reasons why money has to return to the victim. And Madam Ladidi again have also affirmed the need, and the UN Convention also support this, that asset recovery should return to the victim. I'm also happy that Madam Ladidi have also mentioned that the regulation, the 2019 regulation, also have a provision for sub-national restitution. And he went further to confirm that the $1 million from the US going back to Bayelsa has to return back to Bayelsa for the people. Again, that sent a very right signal to the international community that the Nigerian government is clear on the need to support those who are victims of grand corruption. And again, we also need to include the Delta State as well. I am happy that Delta State government have now formally written to the Ministry of Justice, and I hope that this same principle of victim will also apply to Delta State as well. But let me also quickly add that Ladidi again was trying as much as possible to confirm, and which we all can affirm, that President Buhari have done great work on the asset recovery globally. And we are very grateful, particularly in the cooperation with the Ministry of Justice, civil society. The first time in history in this country and internationally, we were invited as civil society to participate in the Abuja 2 negotiation. That was the negotiation between the Nigerian and the Swiss government. It has never happened in the world for civil society to participate in any negotiation on asset restitution to the country where the money is stolen from. And that's what has led to the cash disbursement to the poor people across the country. And we are currently monitoring how that money is going to benefit the people across the country. But let me quickly add that the issue of restitution and the issue of benefit to the people, but the real problem that lies is that why we have faced some challenge is what Madam Ladidi can also allude to, that there is lack of cooperation. Although Dr. Kisley have asked me not to make a reference a while ago, I wonder how we will be able to provide a concrete recommendation to in moving forward. We are in a big challenge in the country, and the big challenge is that some stakeholders are not cooperating with the Ministry of Justice. And because of this lack of cooperation and lack of coordination between some stakeholder and the Ministry of Justice, the regulation of 2019 is not being able to be implemented. And because of the lack of implementation of that regulation, that is the problem we have faced. And that's why you don't have the central-based database working. Like the normal question we normally ask in the development world, and so what? When the president constituted the Presidential Audit Committee, and so what? What now happened? Did it solve the problem? Or the problem is still there? If the problem is still there, the president is responsible for the appointment of these stakeholders. The president is responsible for the appointment of the minister. Don't you think it is also right for the president to take responsibility at this point in time when you answer the question, and so what? So unfortunately, we are now in a situation where we cannot make reference to certain things. But however, in moving forward, because what we are all interested in is that this whole debate we are talking about in the country about asset management is a huge controversy. We need resources at this point in time. The budget deficit as we speak today is huge, and the government needs all the resources of this world. If you go around the country, particularly the anti-corruption agency, the resources that they keep, either interim or final, if properly managed, Nigerian government has nothing to do with World Bank. They have nothing to do with IMF. But unfortunately, these assets are not properly managed, and it is not good for the country. And at this point in time, the Ministry of Justice has taken steps to address this problem, flowing from the recommendation of the Presidential Audit Committee. But unfortunately, some stakeholders are not cooperating. And if some stakeholders are not cooperating, what should happen? Who should take decision? Who should act? That's where I said that the president of this country, Buhari, who campaigned, if you recall, the reason why Nigeria voted the president into power was on the issue of corruption. And when the president came on board, he made a very clear commitment in tackling corruption, either at the ground level or at the petty level. And we must commend him. He has done so well. But however, there are challenges. In moving forward, how do we address those challenges? For example, like the regulation 2019 that is facing some problem of implementation, the president needs to understand that there are challenges, and the president can call these parties, these stakeholders, and say, I am the president of Nigeria. This is my vision. This is what I expect to see. I am sure that this problem we are facing today in the country, we will not face it. You know the amount of resources, taxpayers' money that is invested in all this committee we are setting up. The Presidential Audit Committee we are talking about, you know what it costs the taxpayer to be able to run that committee. Even the ongoing other salami investigation that is going on, it costs taxpayers' money. All these resources are supposed to be going for what would have benefited the Nigerians. But however, my recommendations and the way I think we should move forward is first, the Ministry of Justice, they should ensure that they published the regulation as widely as possible so that all stakeholders should be involved. And I'm happy that the Ministry of Justice have also cooperated with civil society. It is the first of its kind in the world. It has never happened. With my experience in the last 30 years working on asset recovery in this country and internationally, I have not seen any country that have been able to take such a bold step. I think the missing link in Nigeria today is that we must encourage the president to take leadership. And the leadership we are asking the president to take is to ensure that there is a coordination, there is action, and then the so what question we must always ask it. When you set up a committee and so what now happened? Then at a point in time, we should be able to ask ourselves, where are we with the recommendation of those committees? For example, I make reference earlier on that Nigerian government has subjected themselves through the first and second review of the UNCAC process. That is the second review process. In those review process, there were concrete recommendations out of it. Has Nigeria implemented them? If Nigerians have not implemented them, what has happened?
All right, the Reverend David Ogolo, thank you very much there. You know you are still firing, but we need to take comments from our viewers, and those comments have come in by way of tweets. And we earlier hinted that we have a second topic to discuss. But Kirian, let's quickly go over these comments. Tweets from Mutula Sunday. There should be some kind of monthly update on recovered assets to keep the public abreast of how those assets are being managed.
Innocent Yawal James, recovered assets always find their way back to corrupt hands. Going by some instances we have witnessed over time, the only way is to install transparency and discipline in recovered assets by centralizing it to a particular commission with detailed information and give report periodically.
All right, let's keep that. Mutana Farouk says recovered assets should be plowed back into the economy, while penalties should be meted out to discourage people from further looting.
Jack Solomon says some civil society groups have been pushing for important legislation on asset recovery and anti-corruption, which would give clearer rules and powers to relevant authorities.
Titus Mondenok, we need to strengthen the institutions responsible for managing looted funds and assets recovery if we are to make any meaningful headway.
Festus says President Buhari's fight against corruption is improving Nigeria's image and reducing the harm it's doing to our society and development. There's need for transparency in the management of recovered assets. There should be a register for all recovered assets, and it should be accessible to all Nigerians.
Usman Banu Kanto, what is paramount about looted funds is monthly updates. The ministers of finance, justice, and heads of the anti-corruption agencies, as well as the CBN Accountant General, should constantly and consistently enlighten Nigerians on the status of recoveries.
All right, we'll appreciate Daniel Obachu, Cecilia Koroma, and Okeju Olabaju. These are some of the twists that we have on this particular topic. And at this point, we'd like to appreciate all our guests who have made it possible for us to dissect the topic for our first conversation this morning on Good Morning Nigeria. First of all, we'd like to thank Ladidi Baratu Mohammed, who is the Head Asset Recovery Management Unit, Federal Ministry of Justice. So thank you for coming. And of course, we had Adedayo Kayode, who is the Director, Asset Tracing Recovery and Management of the Independent Corrupt Practices and Other Related Offences Commission, ICPC. Thank you indeed for coming. And coming from the angle of CSO, we had Reverend David Ugala, Executive Director, African Network for Environment and Economic Justice. It's been a pleasure talking to you. All right, this is Good Morning Nigeria, and we are done with the first leg of our conversation for today. Second leg is coming. For now, let's take a short break. Stay with us.
As a strong immune system increases the chances of victims surviving COVID-19, a corruption-free society creates opportunities for citizens to thrive and prosper. Build your immunity. Stop corruption now. Report all acts of corruption to ICPC on this toll-free number 0800 2255 4272. This message is brought to you by ICPC and NTA.
Introducing the new and tasty Peak Yogurt. The nourishment to be you, do you, and go for you. Peak Yogurt comes in orange, strawberry, and plain sweetened flavour. All available in nearby stores.
She cried. She cried in anguish and in pain. She bears the scourge of her grief. She toils in vain for justice and succumbs to silence. He gloats over his malady. Like a beast, he pounces with no remorse. Her cry meant nothing. Her pain feeds her shame. Like an orphan, she is left to grieve in solitude. But no more will she cry in vain. Her adversaries will henceforth bear the brunt of their bestiality. Rape is evil. Rape is a plague, a pandemic of monumental consequences. We must unite and kick it out of our society.
Connect with NTA and stand against rape and rapists. This message is brought to you by the Nigerian Television Authority, NTA.
The number of the COVID-19 cases in Nigeria is increasing daily, with many more tests ongoing. The battle of testing, isolating, treating, and attending to the affected persons rests heavily on the shoulders of our health workers, constantly putting their lives on the line and at risk to contain this virus, save and protect the lives of millions of Nigerians. To these health workers, we at the Nigerian Television Authority, NTA, on behalf of millions of Nigerians, say a big thank you for all that you have done and are doing. To the security agencies enforcing the lockdown and every other frontliner, we say thank you for putting your lives on the line to save ours. There is no amount of words that can quantify our gratitude. Thank you. This message is brought to you by the Nigerian Television Authority, NTA, Africa's largest television network.
All All right, welcome back, and it's still Good Morning Nigeria live on NTA's network service. We have a second topic for discussion this morning, and it is on non-interest banking and economic development. Seated with us in the studio right now for this discussion is the Managing Director and Chief Executive Officer of Jaiz Bank PLC, Hassan Usman. Hassan Usman, pleasure to have you with us on the program this morning.
Thank you for having me. Good morning.
All right, Kieran.
First of all, let's, what do we understand, or what should we understand, because you're a professional, by non-interest banking? Because ordinarily, many would believe that banks survive based on interest. And now we're talking about non-interest banking. Can we get further explanation on what that means?
Well, in Nigeria, non-interest bank refers to Islamic finance, Islamic banking, because it is in Islamic banking that you transact banking transaction without interest. Rather, what you do, you trade with your partners, you lease to them, or you share profit and loss together.
How does that work out? I mean, Kieran just asked, the received wisdom ordinarily tells you that, well, first of all, banks hunt for deposits, and it is the deposit that they now take out to customers who come for access, and the spread that they get on it is from the interest is what keeps the bank going. So how do you survive as an institution?
Well, in the conventional banks, as they are so called, you take deposit as a loan, and so you pay interest on it. In a non-interest or Islamic bank, what you do is you take deposit as an equity. So your depositors are your partners in business. So what you do is, once you take this deposit, you deploy them into various transactions with customers who require financing. So rather than say lending in conventional bank, we say we finance transactions. So this financing can come in the form of a sale. So somebody wants a car, we buy the car, we sell to him on credit with a markup. So the profit that we add is what comes to the institution that will be used to share with the depositors, and then the remaining will be used to pay for overheads. And if there is still remnants, it will be paid to shareholders as dividend. The other customer comes, he needs a house. So we buy the house. Perhaps he provides some equity also into the house, 20%, 30%, and we provide 70%. We buy the house, so we lease the house to him. He pays rent, and then at the same time start to gradually buy the bank out. And then eventually he owns the house altogether.
Well, this is very interesting. I've heard about this before, but not in details, as we're trying to explain. Now, who is eligible, to bank with you? And when we talk about equity, what do you expect from such persons, assuming someone wants to open an account with Jaiz Bank for the purpose of doing business? What qualifies the person, to do business with Jaiz Bank?
All Nigerians are qualified to open an account, whether young or old, male or female, and all you need is to just open an account. We maintain the usual current account, in which case you are just using it to transact business. You are not asking the bank to invest it for you. You are not expecting any return on it. We also have a deposit account, which is on equity basis. That means you are providing equity to the bank to trade with, from which you share the profit that the bank makes.
How do your books look like?
The books or the balance sheet of a non-interest bank looks similar, except for some lines. When you come to lending, we will provide the name of the investment, so we call them investments instead of lending. When you look at the deposits, we have the normal deposit, which is current account, which is similar to that of a conventional bank. But then you have the equity type of deposit, which is, we call it Mudaraba, but it's really quasi-equity to the bank. It's just like a shareholder, but you do not have voting rights, and it's temporary because you can bring it for 30 days, for 90 days. You can also operate it on a savings basis. That means you put it in, you can take today, take some tomorrow, but the essence is that you want to share in the profit. So you are exposing the deposit, unlike in a conventional bank that you are giving the bank a loan. Here you are giving the bank money to trade with as a partner.
Now, let me ask this question. Despite the COVID-19 pandemic and associated disruptions, we hear that your bank is still confident of closing the year 2020 with 200 billion balance sheet. Where lies your confidence?
Well, Islamic banking worldwide is a growing phenomenon. It's been growing at the rate of about 15%. Now, in Nigeria, for the last 4 years, Jaiz Bank has been closing the balance sheet at about 50%. Last year, we were at 108. That's 2018, sorry. By the end of 2019, we're at 162 billion in balance sheet, which is about more than 50% growth. Similarly, if you look at our earnings, 2018 we had less than 9 billion in earnings. By the end of 2019, we had almost 15 billion, which is over 65-68% growth. The profitability, we closed 2018 at 900 million in profit, and by end of 2019 we closed at 2.1, which is more than 100% growth in profitability. So this is the norm for Islamic finance, because there is a large gap of need around this compliant product. It is a system that shares risk and return. That gives some level of fairness between entrepreneurs and also those who are investing. And it's growing because also there is a large number of people who are looking for it because of their ethical requirement to avoid interest, which they consider as unjust in some respect.
I was just wondering, is your faith a factor before you are accepted as either a depositor or a borrower from the bank?
Not at all. The principles is underscored by all the religions. Perhaps maybe Islamic finance becomes Islamic finance because current trend is mainly promoted by people with the calling of Islam, and perhaps maybe the Islamic faith frown too hard on it rather than the other faiths, because all the revealed books also prohibited interest in all its forms. So in terms of Jaiz or any Islamic bank, it calls all. The underlying contracts are also what humanity was using all before banking. Because what are the underlying contracts? Is I'm buying and selling, and everybody does that every day. Perhaps maybe most people buy and pay cash, but a number of people buy on credit, and that's what we do. Almost everybody leases either a car or a house, and that's what is provided.
What exactly do you finance mostly? Is it trading, development, manufacturing, construction, or what? So who are the kinds of customers that you deal with and right now, and what kind of customers would you like to also see in future?
Well, all this you have mentioned, from manufacturing to consuming finance, consumption finance, to agriculture, real estate, all sectors we finance. There are some areas that we do not finance. All products and services that can adversely affect society, we do not finance because of the ethical requirements. For example, we do not operate an account of a brewer. Even if they are not borrowing from us, they just want to deposit money with us, we will not take, because we will not open an account for them. Similarly, any company that is producing arms and ammunition, because of the side effect that could generate, we also will not do. And if your business is also going to affect seriously the environment, we also will not open an account for you.
Time is not on our side for now. Let me ask you this. In 2016, the bank's license was upgraded to a national one. Is Jai's Bank now operating the full capacity of a national bank?
We are not yet full capacity, but we have grown our branch network from 3 when we started in 2012 to now 40 branches.
40?
Yes, and these 40 branches have cut across most part of the geopolitical zones of Nigeria. So in terms of representation, we are almost everywhere, but we have not reached our potentials yet.
Very curiously, at the time, Kirian, on Good Morning Nigeria, we've always discussed the usurious interest rates from some of the regular banks, double-digit interest rates. Are Nigerians taking advantage of your mode of operation to beat a path to your door? That's one. And secondly, who exactly are your shareholders? Are the depositors also like your shareholders, or it's a different structure?
Okay, in terms of the customers taking advantage, yes, because, you know, interest is not just the simple interest that is the problem. It's the fact that it will compound. Mm-hmm. Because when you take a loan today, you don't know how much it will be depending on your circumstance by the time you are exiting. So if you have issues within the period of the loan, that loan will be compounding and it could double over time. So that's one of the major issues that customers have started to understand. With a sell contract, once you sell, you know, you cannot increase the price because it's a sell. Likewise, when you lease, you can only pay the rentals. You cannot get a compounding of the rental.
Now, yes or no, why are you here this morning? To promote Jai's Bank?
Yes, of course. We've just finished our annual general meeting. We had a very good year, 2019, and we are very hopeful also, even with COVID, that 2020 will also be very good, God willing.
All right, Hassan Usman, CEO Jai's Bank PLC, would like to thank you for being with us on Good Morning Nigeria today.
It's my pleasure.
Okay, we also like to appreciate our viewers who have tuned in to Good Morning Nigeria. We're back tomorrow, as usual, same time, 7 in the morning. Until then, take personal responsibility, stay safe, and be well. I'm Kingsley.
And I'm Kieran. Have a great day.